For this video, I'm going to discuss the transformation of women in the workforce and its effects on the family. First, I will examine the role of women in the labor force before World War II as homemakers in caring for their children. Then, I will discuss the effects of World War II and the feminization of the workforce. A study by O'Neill in 1992 touches on how in 1947, 28% of employees were women, whereas in 1988 it rose to 45%. Thirdly, I will discuss the inability for many women to advance in their careers due to ceiling barriers and discrimination. Lastly, I will examine how the presence of women in the workforce, although not a new concept, has greatly affected the family, specifically with a lack of supportive family leave policies from employers. To begin, before World War II, the traditional role of women was to be a homemaker and care for the children. But with men going off to war and with economic turmoil of the Great Depression, many women began to fill vacant jobs left by men. Unfortunately, women were oftentimes paid less than their male counterparts and were usually the first to be let go when companies made cuts. The article Women's Roles Before World War II from 2014 discusses how the typical working woman was often young, single, and self-supported. Because of this, married women weren't often welcome in the workplace, and in 1934, numerous states banned married women from holding jobs. If married women did carry jobs, they were often seen in industries such as nursing, teaching, textiles, and secretarial work, traditional female roles. Other than that, married women in work, that wasn't a prior notion, as married women were expected to care for the children at home. To continue, with the turn of World War II, the feminization of women in the workplace resulted from a decline of participation from men in the labor force and a decline in the retirement age. O'Neill in 1992 examines how before 1948, women aged 25 to 44 years of childbearing age were rarely seen in the workforce. But by 1978, almost 75% of them were in the labor force. There was a great decline in women leaving their careers to care for children and an increasing prevalence of women in the labor force. With this change, many women were forced to choose between carrying a job and getting married, and oftentimes they chose the former for economic prosperity. O'Neill also discusses how in the 1980s, women were working and doing so continuously. They were attending college at the same rate as men and entering into fields that were solely inhabited by men in previous generations. This challenged the traditional societal norm where women were the homemakers and men were the ones who attended higher education and earned income for the family. Thirdly, despite the increased prevalence of working women, discrimination has persisted to prevent women from advancing in their careers, despite their qualifications and achievements to do so. O'Neill also discusses that although discriminatory barriers are illegal, many still remain, such as resentment of a female boss, difficulty with promoting women to managerial positions, etc. Connecting to this, South African women in the public sector are rarely seen in higher-level senior roles. In South Africa, Osituyo's study in 2018 discusses how 70.7% of public sector executive positions are held by men, with only 29.3% of positions held by women. We can also see this trend in the US, as I'm sure many of you are aware. Unfortunately, women are rarely represented in managerial positions where decisions are made due to the ceiling barriers that exist to discourage women from excelling in their careers. Masculinity is often associated with dominance, self-confidence, aggressiveness, leadership ability, and logical thinking, which are all traditionally viewed as desirable traits of higher executive level positions. Unfortunately, though, when women do attain higher level positions, they are seen as deviating from their expected roles and violating the traditional female traits expected of them. Lastly, it is important to note how women have adapted their careers to family life with the transformation of work in America. As you know, many women are part-time because they want to care for their families, but they have had to sacrifice their careers in doing so. And with this, many employers haven't adopted family-friendly policies such as paid leave or maternity leave, which we have seen in Europe. I wrote about this in a last essay where women were able to take paid maternity leave off as well as fathers, and it greatly benefited the family. And it was shown that with competitive countries, it didn't actually affect their economic prosperity like many believe. And because of this, since we don't have these policies in America, women are often the ones who adjust their work schedules and compromise their careers for their family. A study by Parker in 2015 discusses how only 16% of Americans believe that having a mother who works full-time is ideal. So obviously, people are saying that there needs to be a balance, and only 42% believe having a mother that works part-time is ideal. Society has created a paradox where women are expected to maintain their traditional gender roles as a homemaker, and those who choose their career over family are seen as deviant and violating the family structure that has been in place for so long. It is also apparent that gender roles are still lagging despite the growth with our labor force. Parker notes that in 2013, mothers spent 10.7 hours involved with childcare, whereas fathers only spent 7.2. Women should not be expected to care for the home and sacrifice their careers while doing so. Society has created this family structure where women are expected to be the homemakers, and where women who go outside of these norms are seen as deviant because they want to pursue their careers just like men have been able to do. To sum up, before World War II, women were expected to care for their children and to take care of their home. With the transformation of women in the workforce after World War II, and more women entering into the workforce, they began to go outside of their homes and attain careers that were traditionally filled by men. As women began to become more prevalent in the labor force, discrimination also grew. As we can see, there's a massive wage gap in the US where women who are performing the same jobs as men aren't getting the same income. Working women face ceiling barriers where they are unable to advance to higher level positions. Atatuyo's study in 2018 mentions that 90.8% of chairpersons are males and only 9.2% are women. This proves that we must work towards creating a women-friendly workplace that allows women to advance in their careers to higher level decision-making positions. If women make 50% of our society, then 50% of chairpersons should be women, but this is not the case, as I'm sure you know. We should take note of IBM in India. In Sirivan's 2015 study, they have hired an executive diversity manager to exclusively work on diversity and gender issues at hand. In today's society, it is more important than ever that we are gender inclusive and allow individuals, both men and women, to pursue their careers. Because of this, we must also work on family leave policies, as I mentioned in a previous essay, like Europe has been doing. At the employer level, because this is oftentimes left up to the discretion of the company. In the United States, it's not mandatory that there are leave policies in place, and I definitely think this should be an issue that we address. Thank you for listening to my research paper, and I hope you were able to gain some insight on this topic.